Hello and welcome to this spooky edition of Splatterdice Reviews.
And today's board game review is Mansions of Madness 2nd Edition by Fantasy Flight Games. Mansions of Madness is a game for 1 to 5 players and takes place in the Arkham Horror universe, which is Fantasy Flight Games' take on the Cthulhu mythos. The first thing to know about this game is it requires an app to play, so if you don't like the idea of using an app to run the game, then this one is an easy miss for you. So, what's the game all about, and how does it work? Using the app, you will select a scenario to play, tell the app which characters you are using, then collect the item cards it tells you to take. The app will then read out a nicely voice-acted introduction before telling you which map tiles and tokens to set up. You can get this game up and running in about 5 minutes, which is always nice. You will be taking on the role of an investigator, such as Preston Fairmont, the billionaire, or Agatha Crane, the occultist. Each character has a set of attributes with a numerical value that will be used when taking tests throughout the game. They also have a health and sanity value, as well as a special rule unique to that character. These investigators will be making their way through a spooky mansion or similar setting, trying to solve a mystery. What really makes the game stand out is the enormous amount of narrative text in the app, as well as the ability to bring in NPCs who you can question, something very difficult to accomplish in traditional board games. This really does a fantastic job of giving you an immersive experience, a fleshed out world complete with sound effects. So let's get into the gameplay. The game round has 2 phases: the investigator phase, where you and the other players will take your turn, and the mythos phase, where the app will unleash all kinds of unpleasant horrors upon you. On your turn, you may take 2 actions from the following: move, interact with a token in the app, or attack a monster. There are other actions such as casting spells or barricading doors, but we won't cover those here. There are sometimes actions additional to this that will appear in the app, but let's just focus on the basics. Moving is simple. Each move action allows you to move up to 2 spaces. In Mansions of Madness, the spaces on map tiles are marked by these white lines. No hexes or squares here. Interacting with the tokens comes in 3 main forms. Interacting with one of these lantern tokens is an explore action and will reveal new parts of the map as you open doors into the darkness. Sometimes doors might be locked and you will have to pass a test or solve a puzzle to get through. More on puzzles later. Interacting with one of these yellow question marks is a search action and is how you will gather equipment and uncover evidence. Then there is this blue exclamation mark token, which is used for interacting with effects such as switches or levers. Some scenarios will have these NPC tokens depicting a person on them, which you can interact with to ask questions. The third most common action you will be using is attacking a monster. Click the monster, click attack, and then tell the app what kind of weapon you are using. The app then gives you a bit of flavor text about how you are attacking, and then a test you will need to pass in order to deal damage. As you can see, the app does a lot of heavy lifting in this game, and cuts down on bookkeeping. But what it really does is allow for more fleshed out stories and descriptions of your surroundings, really setting the mood. But the biggest thing the app brings to the table is replayability. Scenarios in the app have lots of little changes, such as items or even map tiles being different each time you play. And in some of the later scenarios released by Fantasy Flight Games, these changes become even more in-depth. Some of the scenarios released have a murder mystery quality, and what is really cool is the murderer isn't always the same person. The app will give you different responses from the NPCs, and then it is up to you to make the deductions and work out who is the killer. A few other scenarios use a similar changing objective, and for these scenarios, it's good to actually have a pen and paper and take notes. These are some of the best games of Mansions of Madness you will play, as you really feel like a detective, and even better, you can replay them knowing there is a good chance that this time it will play out differently. So that's the basics of the gameplay. But now, let's touch on the bit of the game that really sets it apart: puzzles. Mansions of Madness has these digital puzzles integrated into the app, where you might be trying to unlock a door or piece together an ancient message. These are done with a kind of move the block logic puzzle, or a swap the pieces jigsaw kind of thing. They aren't the most in-depth puzzles, although a lot of people do struggle with this colour sequence coding puzzle. They add this great feeling to the game of actually picking a door lock instead of just rolling some dice. You, the player, actually feel some accomplishment when you figure it out. Be warned though, puzzles do grind things to a halt a bit as players try to work out the solution. Everything else is just kind of paused. So that's about it for the investigator phase. You will be running around, picking stuff up, following little clues, and solving puzzles until you uncover the mystery. But while you do that, you will have to contend with the mythos phase. The mythos phase is where the app chucks all of its cruelty and malice at you. The mythos phase most commonly begins with the app naming an investigator and giving a little description about something bad happening to them. Then it will usually tell that investigator to pass a test to try and avoid damage. However, as the scenario goes on longer, these tests get harder, and sometimes there is no test at all, as the app just deals damage or insanity directly to an investigator. Sometimes it will even affect multiple investigators. This does a great job of letting you know when you are running out of time, as everything becomes that much more deadly. It really gives you the feeling of this malevolent force closing in around you and slowly pushing you towards the abyss. After the mythos event, the app will usually spawn some kind of monster. If any investigator has line of sight to a monster, they have to take a horror check, handled by the app, to avoid taking any sanity damage. Yep, that's right, in Mansions of Madness, just seeing the monsters can drive you insane, and that's before they even begin ripping into you with their teeth and claws. So let's get on to damage and see how that works. Well, damaging enemies is simple. Let's all say it together. The app handles it. When you deal damage, you just click this icon to tell the app how much damage you dealt. Investigators, however, take damage a little differently. They can take physical damage, represented by the red cards, and sanity damage, represented by the blue cards. Instead of tokens like many games, Mansions of Madness uses cards to count damage, and this is quite ingenious, as sometimes you will receive damage cards face up that have some nasty effect. For example, this physical damage would give you a broken leg if dealt face up. Until you can find a way to flip it face down, you will incur the penalty listed on it. The same goes for sanity damage. The more of these cards on you, the harder time your investigator is going to have. If you take too much damage, you become wounded and can't do as much. But take too much sanity damage, and well, this is where things get interesting. Now you go insane. Insane investigators draw a card from this deck and secretly read the back. Insanity cards may change that investigator's win condition, making the player do unexpected and illogical things, while everyone else at the table wonders if this insane investigator is now friend or foe. Because of course, some of these insane win conditions will be at odds with the rest of the player group. This is a fantastic part of the game. For something so steeped in Lovecraftian horror, it does an amazing job of spreading paranoia among the investigators and delving into the cosmic horror. Well, that's pretty much it for the gameplay, so let's take a look at the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good. Mansions of Madness truly excels in its narrative. The use of the app allows for more in-depth storytelling than any traditional board game ever could. A game of Mansions of Madness really makes you feel like you are playing through some creepy horror story, complete with sound effects and music to add to the atmosphere. The dice mitigation in this game is quite good too. The more you investigate, the more clue tokens you will gain. Clue tokens can be used to convert failed dice rolls into successes, and sometimes the app will have other uses for them too. The game is also just an all-round high-quality product. The miniatures are nice, the artwork is fantastic, and the rulebook is clear and easy to understand. I really don't have much more to say about that. If you like horror, it's just a really good horror story board game. The bad. Mansions of Madness does have one very serious downside, and that is the app, ironically. While the app is great for storytelling and bookkeeping, there is always that risk of it becoming a crutch for the gameplay, and Mansions of Madness does fall into that trap a bit. It streamlines the gameplay to such a degree that your turn will often boil down to move here, click the token on the app, read the app, roll the dice the app tells you to roll, check the app for the results, and so on. You will be spending a lot of time looking at the app, and honestly, it's a bit too much, to the point where it almost feels like a video game with a few bits of cardboard you need to use. What is also an issue is the game is designed with this pass the parcel idea of the app, where the active player runs the app for their turn before passing it on to the next player. The game runs a lot smoother if one player takes on the role of the app user, an app master if you will. But that defeats the main purpose of having an app in the first place, to remove the need for a games master. The ugly. Well, this one is quite simply too much unnecessary content. Mansions of Madness has 20 plus scenarios to play, which is plenty, but most of these require expansions, all of which come with new cards, map tiles and tokens. This seems good at first, until you end up with this. A massive stack of map tiles the app may ask you to pull from during a game. This can cause excruciatingly long breaks in play as you search through all of these double-sided tiles, some of which are different versions of the same room. How many kitchens and dining rooms does this game really need? Couple this with the continuous app referencing, and the game feels like it takes twice as long to play as it really should. The time this game saves you on setup is actually just hidden within the game. A game with too much stuff, resulting in memorable stories that take a bit too long to tell. Overall, I do really like Mansions of Madness 2nd Edition, but I do think the game loses something with the app, and I loved how in the first edition of the game, although setup was laborious, once you started playing, the game went at a really good pace. This would be a not boring at all game, but I can't deny that all the breaks in play to check the app and set up new areas means I have to rate this as not very boring. A good game, but it is dragged down by that laborious search for the right tile.
Well, I'm bored of reviewing this game now. If you like these reviews, feel free to like and share and subscribe to the channel. Bye.